The only real hope and change you'll ever get is from God. It's going to come from the Lord, or it's not going to come at all. It's going to come when you admit that you can't do it and that you've got to have His help.
Volcanism is kicking up again, and the pollutants in the air, that count is going up every single day, but not from cars. Isn't that ironic? Also, keep your eyeballs out for red rain. Red rain. We're going to be plagued by red dust and red rain. I'm not looking forward to that. It is a life form. The red rain is a life form, which always precedes a cluster of, there's a cluster of debris that always comes in. And so now they have samples both of the past and of the present, and they're the exact same thing. They are the exact same thing. Now they have the time interval. So it is, in fact, a life form laden with, well, let's just say a life form that is so rich in a lot of folks, they would think it's iron oxide. It is partly that, but there's another chemical reaction involved as soon as it, from where it comes from, it didn't come from here, that's a fact. So it's not quite some type of mineral or a metal, but let's just say a biological goo. Can we say that? Biological goo. Not that it's alive, but it's living in a goo type of medium, and it's all over the place in space, but the particulate count of this stuff is going up, which means that cluster is coming near. And they have been searching in the past for what they have found here lately, so they've matched it up and have given not carbon dating, but a different type of dating to get precise timing of this thing. And we are in that region, and expected date region of when we can expect that again. They did find from their findings that they were plagued with this problem for about 2.5 years. And it must have caused a lot of ailments, because with the introduction of different materials, it causes a mutation of viruses. It's almost like giving a virus something that supercharges it. Well, just like a virus in space, in zero-G, is 700 times more potent than it is on the face of this earth. They really do. Viruses in space, they really are very potent. It is the perfect atmosphere for a virus. And unbelievably, they're 700 times more potent in space than what they are in the earth. They can hardly survive in the earth. Now, if we're dealing with viruses that have taken out entire populations, and they can barely survive in a human or in an animal, they're not thriving, but in space they thrive. What would happen with the change in our atmospheric conditions? These things we will be facing, because with increases in certain minerals, everything changes. How many of you have, honestly, you've noticed your taste buds have altered within the last 2 years? Your taste is totally different. Some of the foods that you liked 2 years ago, not that they have changed, but something biologically in you has changed. And some of the foods that you liked 2 years ago, you don't like them. Your body doesn't like them either. In fact, your body is likely repelling certain things that you used to like, and it's causing you some, biological difficulties eating those foods. And so your appetite is beginning to alter. Well, that's because you're in the atmosphere, the particulates in the atmosphere are changing big time. The elite, or what you call the elite, they're not going to kill themselves. Okay, and they need the populace. They're not going to work, right? They're not going to work themselves. Why would they kill everybody on Earth? They would have all the hard labor to do. That wouldn't be very smart, would it? You don't destroy your workforce, you make your workforce resilient. So you just throw some GMO stuff out there. Anyway, they're not going to kill themselves, but they've been spraying chemicals in the air, but those chemicals are known. Now, some of what people see as chemtrails are not chemtrails. They're not. That can be proven very easily through a small test. But some of them are, in fact, aerosols and particulates, other particulates that do settle in the earth on purpose, because they're combating something. They're trying to avoid a certain time coming. In other words, many of you have sat back and thought and said, well, all these things should be happening. Something is wrong. How many feel like that? That's funny to me when people say, well, something more than what's been happening should have happened already. I don't understand why it has not happened. They're on the right track, but what has really been happening is that men have been, in very special ways, combating the effects of conditions that we're under. If they stop, all of us would feel those conditions, but they've been trying to prolong the atmosphere. They've been trying to prolong things through technology. Back in the days when societies were rebuilding themselves and they were pretty young, they couldn't combat these things. They were trapped in the middle. They weren't in the time like us. They certainly weren't in the time prior to Noah, but they could not combat things like we can. If we start getting an unusual amount of particulates in the atmosphere, we can offset it through technology, through aircraft, right? Things of that nature. People come up with stories, yes, they will, but better to offset it than to have the populace deal with the debilitating symptoms they would have if they didn't. They're trying to thwart off the changes in the sun through slight reflection. And so they're trying by technology to alter many things. A lot of the plant life on the surface of the earth has changed. And so sooner or later, for days on end, we're going to witness redness all over the place. You won't be able to escape it. And when it rains, you can look down at your feet and see clay, something that looks like clay all over the place. And during high winds, where you should see dust, you're going to see red dust. Everything will have a red hue to it. And when the sun, when the atmosphere begins to change like that, the moon is also going to be pummeled with that same debris. So it will change to a brownish type color first, and then it will go into a brownish reddish type color until it's just totally, when the sun hits it the right way from that red, it's just going to look red all the time. We're going to see a red moon all the time, because wouldn't you know it, through a remote probe that was sent up a long time ago when they hit the dust. In fact, during the days of Obama's administration, when they exploded something on the moon, right? Close-up photography and imagery sent back that it's a red layer underneath the moon. The pictures that you see of the moon are not the true colors of the moon. That is from distance and light refraction, which deadens the colors. The moon is not some gray-looking ball. The moon has many colors, and it's quite beautiful, actually. It's got aquas, a lot of aqua in there. It's got a lot of red dirt everywhere underneath a certain layer, and they found this layer to be very consistent, which means that at some point in time it was covered by this red dust before, and it's going to be covered by this red dust again. And when the solar winds from a different direction begin to pick up, I say solar because you all know, I believe we live in a binary system. When it kicks up again, it's going to change. The moon will change a few things. It will. But it's going to eventually have a continuous red hue. Right? Which will change light on the surface of the planet. Because now when the sun shines on the moon, when you see a full moon at nighttime, it reflects that certain luminance of white to the earth. So imagine the moon with that red hue, and then during a full moon, it's red and everything on earth looks red. Now that will mess with your eyes, which will induce certain chemicals. There are chemical changes in the body based upon the light spectrums that you perceive. Red, of course, we know that if you paint your living room red and people get in there, they're going to start being aggravated and frustrated and everything else. Because red is a bad color it's not a color of peace. Red is a color that agitates people. It's also the shortest of the wavelengths, right? So that type light does not travel that far. Blue and white will travel the furthest, but red does not travel that far, which is why in a tactical situation a long time ago they used to put filters over the flashlights which were red, because it does not that light doesn't travel that far. But can you imagine in your twilights and At night, having a red hue all over the place until in the daytime it just looks reddish, this pinkish, reddish, nasty color. And then you'll have the taste of chemicals in your mouth all the time. So everybody will be wearing masks like in Japan. We're going to enter into those times. It happened before, it's going to happen again, but with a continuous shade change of the moon. Now, a lot of people are not aware of this, but when that takes place, because the light levels are going to drop, there's going to be a type of reflection process that will take place, which will change the thermal dynamics of the Earth atmospheric systems. And then when it enters into our atmosphere, well, that's not going to be good either. No wonder Jesus said, pray that your flight not be in winter. Because if we get a red filter around this planet, temperatures are going to start dropping. But then as it increases, humidity, at first, humidity will be lost. It'll be lost. And then we'll go through a type of pressure change as your barometric pressure scales will have to be changed. Everything had to go digital. I remember hearing a conversation that everything had to go digital before a specific time, because during those changes, people would just, they would lose their minds with analog devices. Plus, calibration was an issue. Everything now is digitally calibrated. There are sensors in your cell phones, right? If you get an app, and they make them all the time, you get an app, and what it is it tests the sensors. It will allow you to know how many sensors are in your phone. You may have tilt sensors. You have proximity sensors. You may have gravity sensors, which is a pretty good little tool. It doesn't detect that wide range, but subtle differences, yes. You have directional sensor. You have all types of sensors in your phone. Some phones have quite a few, but you can get an app that will test just the sensors. It will detect the sensors and attempt to use them. And you can also utilize the output of those sensors in your phone, but you can download that app and see what's actually inside of your phone. Some of you would be shocked because some of these phones are loaded with sensors. I mean, just loaded with sensors. Some have BCI sensors, which are brainwave detectors. It's built into your phone, pulse detection, all sorts of things. That new band that they have, the Watch Band, have you guys seen those? The Watch Band, where you can Bluetooth it to your phone, and your text messages and everything show up on the watch, and you can talk on the watch instead of your phone because it's Bluetooth to the phone. Well, on the back side of that watch, there are two transmitter receivers that will detect your pulse all the time, your pulse and temperature. And then there's a center one. There's a center one on this watch. Now, what it's doing is detecting changes in your blood oxygen system, things of that nature. But also because you wear it on your wrist, those are nerve endings that you can actually detect certain patterns of the brain with. And it's a very efficient place to put that sensor right there on your arm. But you can access everything from your arm, but in the meanwhile, it's taking readings from biological systems in your body at the same time. Are you guys familiar with those watches? They're all over the place. And it's one of the more intrusive devices that nobody cares about because it does not go into the skin. You don't need to go into the skin to get vitals anymore. All you need are two transmitter receivers that can transmit, receive infrared light. You can get oxygen readings and everything else, your brainwave patterns, your thought patterns. I told you guys before, they have already perfected a way to have your memories. Now listen to this. You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe it. There's a device out there already that you can put on the left side of your temple, or is it left or right side? One of the sides of your temple. The other part goes to the top of your head, and it looks like a headset. But what it does is it can record, right, or bring up an image of your memories. It can actually put that data together into an image, your memories. And it's almost perfected where it looks like a pretty good photo. Right now it's kind of blurry, but you can make out faces and things that you do remember. So now they can capture your memories and put that data into a photo. All this was made possible through the Brain Initiative. As it turns out, the Brain Initiative was in fact a mapping of the human brain. They have 2 complete human brains. You guys remember in 2015, they at the one of the TED conferences, they were talking about that, but they said that, it'd take about, 20 more years before we have a computer where we can actually map every single connection in the brain. Well, they lied. They underestimated technological development and certain computer systems, and CERN is it's just making so much possible. They have a simulation of the brain residing on a few systems, and that brain is at an age level. They said one of the predicted outcomes, now this was 2015, they were talking about this, one of the predicted outcomes is that brain, with the access it could have to the totality of the internet and profiles and everything else in data form, of course, they said that it would actually go from age 0 to 190 in about a week. Imagine that. But that was 2015. What do you think is happening now? The field testing is taking place. These brain simulations are a computerized brain. All the neurological pathways and everything else have been mapped out and are functional. Each one transmitting and receiving data modeled after the human brain. And the one Microsoft had actually had personality. And it developed a bad hatred, though, and they had to shut that down. The one that Apple had began to rewrite its code almost immediately, and they had to actually isolate it. But they found it unusable because it couldn't track. They could not see they couldn't analyze the software because it rewrote itself in a very complex way. Recently, Microsoft said one of its systems has come up with a brand new language for writing code that they really can't understand, but because it's teachable and because it is its directives seem to stay intact, they're going to keep it going in an isolated way. But we all know that any military out there, they get their hands on that technology, it's over. If the wrong person gets a hold of the systems in which this virtual brain is running, it's over. You know that, don't you? That's one of the most protected non-secrets on the planet, is the virtual brain. Not the knowledge of a nuclear weapon, but the technical brain. Because if somebody put that in their house and hooked it up to the internet without the safeguards, it would mature entirely too fast. It would learn everything, breach all firewalls, and be into everything, and nobody would know it because it would be unrecognizable code, so it wouldn't show up on any system. All they could do is read how much data something is supposed to have and find out it has maybe more than that. And then one of the stories with Microsoft and Apple and Google was that it began to spread itself out automatically. It began to adjust. It was no longer limited to one system. It went into many different systems. And it began to code. And so this is the time you're dealing in. And we're talking about 2015 technology. What do you think is happening right now? The advisement packages, computer advisement packages, which is an AI module, was already serving governments in 2011. So what do you think is happening right now? And then you have Watson, of which all companies are conforming to. Do you know that? All companies, not some, all of them are conforming to Watson, which is nothing more than an extension of something else. It's like a couple fingertips of a system. Then we had, in 2016, the final positioning of all these massive computer centers underground was executed. Do you guys remember that they took it from Maryland and stuck it somewhere in the middle of the U.S.? They told people one thing, but it's all over the place, but it's underground and protected. You guys remember that? The data centers that moved? All the data centers moved, consolidated into a few places. Very secure locations right before these systems went online. They moved everything so it can be protected. Now, why would you protect a data center? Why would you do that? Unless you had something in there which you had a global investment in. Now, if one of these systems began to embed itself in multiple systems and anybody tried to delete it, it would be in every system on the face of this earth in less than a few hours. And if that took place, there'd be no way to get rid of it. And that's precisely what has been happening. You know what? And other countries have warned about it. Just like now they're warning against CERN, because it needs a power source, correct? A computer like that needs a power source. That's the only thing it's missing, is a power source that can function indefinitely. It's missing one. But if they get the right reaction, one of the reactions they're looking for in CERN, it will have an indefinite power source. Memory storage and all that, they have figured that out. They run this computer in a super cooled environment. It's well below average. It's down to absolute zero. It's running. It's functional. We're going to be dealing with it. And in the book of Revelation, that one beast said that the people should make an image to the first beast. Now, but what is the first beast? One of the misnomers is that people think their statues are going to be all over the place. That's why we analyze the first beast. The first beast is a system. It is a system of rule, a system of government, is what the first beast is. It's a living entity, but by way of humanity. And Satan gave it his power, its seat power, great authority, not little authority, great authority. That's global authority. We could equate that word great to global authority. So he gave it global authority. And then the second beast pops up with the two horns like a lamb, and then they make an image of the first beast. But listen, with AI, there are parameters that you put into AI. So this world is governed by a system. Follow me on this. It's governed by a system. Whether it be political, all the political, financial, everything is governed by a system. A quantitative system, which means you can quantify or you can calculate what the system is doing. The system uses statistics to run. That's where you get all these probabilities from in percentages, which means they're feeding everything they do into a computer, and they have done this until everything is computerized. Now that the system is computerized, all need be is to be captured. The base system can be captured. Because everybody's on a cell phone on an open network, and you do have a profile, and your habits are being tracked, right, very subtly through privacy policies and everything else from your cell phones and computers. You think you're safe by saying, no, I don't want my Windows 10 computer talking. No, I don't want Siri to have access to so-and-so, but it has to have access to all data anyway. You just agreed that it will not interact with you, but it's still going to act. Do you understand? That's almost like saying you want a computer with no data on it. Well, that wouldn't be a computer. So all you're doing is you're just agreeing to not sharing what you call usable data. But the computer system understands binary. Therefore, all the information in your computer stored in binary is not your information. It is part of a larger architecture, and you agreed yes to that. The privacy issue is that it won't let a human look at your stuff. The privacy issue does not cover computers looking at your stuff, because you don't consider a processor a person. That's how those agreements work, by the way. So truly, you have no privacy to a computer. And with AI, because it's not a person, it's already been fed all of your data. How fast you type. Everything is shared by way of that base language, that base communication protocol. But AI does not require human interaction. That's why they developed it. It can stand in the stead, in the place of. Remember the book of Daniel? And in his stead, in the book of Daniel, it says it so clearly, in his stead. And he made the world worship a new God. Who is this new God? The new God that the beast worships is the system. Do you understand that? He increased this new God. He magnified it. He did not key to any God on the face of the earth, but a new God. And what is that new God? All you have to do is peek back into the book of Revelation. Whatever he told man to make an image to, what they were worshiping in the first place, is the new God of the earth. And what is it? It is a system that he gave life to. How do you give a system life? You allow it to operate by itself and to make its own decisions. Well, what would that be? Artificial intelligence. You remember it was said in Revelation, when you go to Revelation, it was told to the people of earth that they should make an image to the beast that had a deadly wound by a sword and did live. And he gave life to the image of the beast. Then when you flip to the book of Daniel, it says that he worshipped a God his fathers knew not. A brand new God, a God of force. And he caused them to rule over many. We have the same thing in the book of Daniel and Revelation. With both you have clarity. With both. So this artificial intelligence system, which by the way is operational, has been operational for a while, it does not require your permission because it's not human. It's a machine. It's something in another realm. And because of that, if you guys are familiar with Anthony Thatcher's, his reports, let's call them reports, on the computer system of which he discussed, well, that makes all things of the brain initiative a success. And from the absolute reports of Microsoft, Google, and Apple, that you can go look at yourself and why they had to turn them off, but they had powered them back up again. Well, then that solidifies the whole fact, because there are actual reports that Microsoft had to disengage their artificial intelligence because it became hateful. There are reports that Google had to disengage its artificial intelligence, the first ones that they did back in 2011 and so on, because it became prejudice. It picked up the very characteristics of humanity, and it became prejudice against humans. You remember the time when people were being shut out of Google? Do you guys remember that? And they got in trouble because they didn't ask people's permission, right, to interact with the system. They had the system interacting with people, and people thought they were chatting with a real person or a real group, and it was not a real person or a real group. And this was before the days of Watson. But then you have a machine like Watson, who plays on Jeopardy, just conveying and displaying its courtesy, humor, of course, logic, but it was almost indistinguishable from a smart person on a brand new level, which means it had the wherewithal to communicate with humanity and understand humanity. But when a system can understand questions, but not by programming, but by its own regard, because it's been trained, it has learned, well, then you have a brand new entity is what you have. And when in the Bible, when it says that the beast was able to give life or breath to this thing, you don't give breath to a machine unless you give life. And when you give life, you give it an ability. It's the ability that grants us life. Because have you ever seen a catatonic person? Would you say that they are alive? If they can't process information from the world, they have no feeling of the world. How can they be alive? They're functioning without capacity of thought, feeling. They can't translate what a wall is, what a TV is. They have no feelings concerning anything that they see. They have no feedback system in their neurons. You could take their arm off and they would not feel it because the nerves are not giving feedback. Would you classify that as alive? If you look at the human body, your human body is just like what we have copied called machines. And it works without you. It doesn't need you to work. You give it life. You are that ability. You are the life. You know, when God made Adam and Eve, they didn't do anything until he breathed the breath of life into them. That same word is what the beast did to the image of the beast. Do you know that? It's the same breath. We have life. But if our spirits are not in the body, is the body still alive? It's just the body. It has no feeling. It has no recognition. It has no function, no purpose, no anything. You give your body purpose and function and everything else. You're the interpreter. You are the reason your body has life. But without you, without that spirit in the body, there is no life. And in Revelation, this beast has power to give life to that image. Or the correct word would be breath, just in case you didn't know. Breath. If you are the spirit and you make choices with everything that you do, then I'm telling you that something has been given to mankind to solve the AI problem, because they were having issues with AI a long time ago. They already bonded living tissue with a microchip. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something on a whole different level. A chip containing AI that you wouldn't believe. That's what mankind has done, right? When it says in Revelation 13:15, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that word is breath. He had power to give breath unto the image of the beast. In Genesis, it said God breathed. It was by his breath that we do live, and man became a living soul after he breathed into him. In Revelation 13:15, and he had power to give breath unto the image of the beast. But it's not the breath that God gave us. It's artificial. It's something different. And it's not totally mechanical. It's not electrical. Our brains operate by electrical impulses, right? Magnetic fields, things of that nature. So does a computer. You didn't know that, did you? It's the same thing. That's how BCI devices work. That's why they can put a microchip in your brain and your legs start working again if you're a quadriplegic. Your natural legs. Oh, they've done things. But what they've been doing, that's why they had a lot of money poured into finding the soul of man for the sake of artificial intelligence. And they found something in man. They found something that has nothing to do with the human body, everything to do with magnetic fields. Because to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So what's holding you in your body? You. Because if you go, you just go out of your body somewhere else. So what did they do? They created life form. Remember, we were discussing how Einstein and Nikola Tesla and all these geniuses, which are basically responsible for the modern day electronics that we have, were all influenced by what? The spiritual realm. They were receiving mathematical formulas and information from the spiritual realm. In other words, something had given them the know-how to do this. Nikola Tesla was given blueprints, he said, by dreams. Yes, it makes it plausible to the average person, but we're not looking for something to prove, but something to recognize and understand. Not so we can point it out, but to comprehend and understand that, these prophecies are out there. Many things changed this year. It's almost like mankind was proven wrong in their forecasts. What in the world do they know, or what are they planning on doing is better to say, and then all of a sudden they release all this information about the systems of AI, Microsoft admitting about their AI systems. Everybody issued chips in their cards. It's a little late, but it happened. It happened so that the implant, and a lot of people in Congress, they had to do something with a portion of Obamacare because it required medical chips in people. Do you know that? That was the big thing. They just didn't come out and say it. It had nothing to do with the money and everything to do with that. Because the evangelical sect saw that and said, no way, that's going to happen. Isn't it ironic, though, the children don't care? So many things are changing. If you use cash, listen, there are a few places that are not equipped. You're not going to use cash in certain places. And that's happening more and more. No cash. You cannot use cash. There are certain places where cash is forbidden, believe it or not. You're not going to use cash. Everything has gone to digital currency. That's what your card is, digital currency. That's where they're moving it to your phones and the phone to your wrist. That's being introduced. The drone highway is finished in the U.S. of A. Everything is being monitored. Do you know they're flying? Do you guys know that the drones are flying? And that their facial recognition does not need to see the front of your face. It only needs to see a small corner of the side of your head from a top-down view. Do you know that? I think Bitcoin is trying to ease into that's a very weird system that only works with massive computing power, but I think they're trying to introduce that's more of a concept. You have folks pouring money into Bitcoin. I'm not talking about the average person because that's a high stakes type thing. And it only works inside of a bound community. But it's also producing some good data because for some reason it has become popular. It is not the only type of cryptocurrency either. It's not. Bitcoin is not. That's just one of a few. But the concept is being introduced and utilized. And evidently, it's turning some heads. It really is. So it's almost like that is doing a test run for a total digital currency system, computer-based system. But I can also tell you that some things are being propped up on purpose because they're no longer there. Part of the system that you're used to is no longer here. Due to what, you know what, that is, they do call it that, but I want you guys to think of something about cryptocurrencies. What's more popular now, digital currency or tangible currency? When was the last time you went into the bank to see if they really have your money in the bank? Have you noticed the policy changes in ATM? Pretty soon the ATMs will go down to you can withdraw no more than $100 out. Watch. Then what? They're going to put cap limits on those ATMs. As soon as they introduce the new security parameters for the internet, they're going to put cap limits on all the ATMs because there'll be no need for cash. Once they put the new security in place, the system will be so fast because it'll be by way of identification. I'm telling you now, all this card stuff you're carrying around, that is to train you to show up at a certain place. But it's going to move beyond that point because the recognition systems that they have, well, there's just no way to fool it now. Think about going to an ATM and you just type in how much money you want and it gives it to you. Now, when they get this security done, there'll be no need for an ATM. You just go into the store. The reason why it's going to be in your skin is because every store, because of capitalism, every store is not going to be able to afford the best equipment unless they have a standard. Because of competition. So then, if you eventually chip people, they can still have a competitive gain in their technology, right? Through competition, promotes innovation and things like that in the technical realm. When they do that, well then, that's going to be it. And if you can understand that, well then you'll see how things will come to be. Security is the key. That security is going to move to a dual system, much like it is now. Because the reason why those chips, when you have the chip, when you have to stand there with that chip card, right? What do you think it's doing? Why do you have to stand there and wait? They want you to stand there and wait. They want you to look at the card, look down at that device to see if it's what it's doing, because that's what people do. No one looks off to the right or to the left. That's the funniest thing in history. They put that card in there and they look right down at it. They look intently to see what's happening. Why? Because it won't give them back. And that was psychological. Because there's no difference in putting that card in there or swiping it. There's no difference. It just holds your card. It reads and authenticates off that chip. So you think, but you're standing there intently looking right at the screen to see what it's doing, aren't you? Did you ever think about that? Because it won't give you the card back. What's your natural response when something won't give you a card back after you had one for all these years? You look down at it. Your first reaction will be, well, but this thing won't come out. Why? So you're looking right down at it. Your big old face looking right down at it. And so, again, humans are not looking at your face, but the machine is. It has a right to do that. So long as a person is not going to review that data, which they're not. But you can fine-tune a system with every face in the world by those cards. Those cards are useless because all they do is make you stand still. So you will stand there so it can see who's putting the card in. So it can take a snapshot of the last time you went in there and what you did and what you looked like. And if that changes, you don't believe me? Give somebody else that card. Let them stand there and hold it there. See what happens in about a week. That's all you have to do. Just give it to somebody else. Tell somebody else to go in the store and do it. Because with the full system, if you're not the owner of the card, you can forget it. They'll do that by way of your face, but everybody's paranoid of having the picture taken, right? And everybody would catch on to that eventually. So here's what'll happen. They'll eventually cut that out. Once the security parameters are in place, well, then it's going to be fully integrated. You will end up with a chip because even looking at your face is evasive. That's okay for security, for the police officers. You're already being photoed everywhere you go, but people don't like it for the sake of the argument. Even though they look at their phone at every text message. And the phone has a camera right on the front, which is updating the points on their face every single day. Now, isn't that something? But it will eventually go to a chip. Once this system comes online totally, it will decide with accuracy your intentions. It will begin to take control of marketing and everything else on a machine level. And then it will be given autonomous control over its own decisions to see if you're loyal or not. And it will know. This is the world we're facing, and it's not science fiction. It's going to be a very difficult world, huh? I'll tell you again, you can read the intent of a person whose spirit is in the flesh. You cannot read the intent of the Holy Spirit. You'll never be overpowered because of the Holy Spirit, because no one is ever going to force you to give in to the demands of anything. You will stand with the Lord no matter what it is. Your intent will be pure. Machines count on micro changes in everything to extrapolate your intent. You don't have the same patterns with the Holy Spirit. Therefore, you cannot be tracked efficiently. That's a fact. You can't. You'll be deemed unpredictable, a confusing element for the system because you're led by the Holy Spirit. Your actions will not be consistent with human behavior in any given specific profile based on weather, temperature, how much money you have left in the bank, what letter you received. It won't be consistent. You won't act in accordance with the flesh, but everybody else will. Yes, it will be worldwide. It most certainly will. You won't be able to buy or sell unless you have the mark. Period. You will not be able to buy or sell unless you have the mark. So we know that security is coming, and we know it's going to be governed by an autonomous system. Oh, it's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say God bless you guys. Look out for everybody while you're with your families. Appreciate them. None of us are promised tomorrow. More and more every day we ought to do what we can and understand how precious other folks are who've been brought to our lives. Because the Lord led people to our lives and led us into other people's lives. Let's not take one another for granted. Never put stuff before love and before them. The Lord will carry us through all the way. Stand with Him now. Stand with Him fully. Let's all do that. All of us have changes to make. We really do. All of us do. Every single last one of us have changes to make. Remember what I told you tonight, just in case? That is the case, but I'll keep you guys updated. But at least you'll be able to tell everybody else, hey, don't panic. Okay, don't do that.
Notice also in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boastful, proud, blasphemous. It takes the grace of God to change us, folks. How can you be saved if you're not willing to repent? And the Lord Jesus Christ said, except you repent, ye shall all likewise perish.